With Xbox 360, we've created technology that will enable people from every age and every corner of the planet to gather together in new ways. It's a product that'll bridge vast distances through shared stories and shared experiences. A product with games at its core, surrounded by limitless, connected digital entertainment.
And tonight, I'm going to show you a world of games that are fueled by high-definition graphics and sound.
Brunch is a time for friends and mimosas, not debates on morality.
All right.
Man, this is really fucking good, Kev.
Thanks. I was worried I added too much pepper.
No, seriously, this is perfect. The only way this can be better is if you put on a fucking shirt.
Dinner and a show, baby.
Oh, please.
Saints Row 1, the game that put Volition on the map. The game that made Volition more bread than Warburtons. The game that produced more copies than China. The game that would create the building blocks for a series that fans came to love and hate. Saints Row 1 was the first big game by Volition. It exceeded expectations and sold more copies than Volition ever dreamed of. It was Volition's Mona Lisa. The Starry Night, the Nighthawks, it was the masterpiece, the magnum opus. It was a piece of art that they could proudly hang up on the wall and say, guess who made that, baby girl? We did. Saints Row 1's development began way back in 2003 under the name Bling Bling. It was then released to the Xbox 360 on the 29th of August 2006. The reviews were overall positive. However, there was one thing that irritated Volition about the reviews to its core, and this one thing not only led to the success of the Saints Row series, propelling it way above the Earth's atmosphere, but it would also contribute as one of the reasons the Saints Row series came crashing back down to Earth and bursting into a ball of flames. The same thing that brought Saints Row its success became the same thing that will bring Saints Row its demise. And what was that thing? It was the tone of the game. You see, while Saints Row 1 was a commercial success and its star was shining bright, it wasn't shining as bright as it could have, and that's because there was a massive shadow cast above it, dimming its full potential, and that shadow was called GTA. Whether the review was positive or negative, it became very clear that Saints Row 1 couldn't escape the GTA comparisons. No matter which way Volition turned, GTA was always in their line of sight. Here are some of the reviews from 2006 when the game was released to illustrate that point. So whilst Volition were happy about the success of Saints Row 1, they were also disappointed in the vast amount of GTA comparisons. Volition needed a way out, a way to escape from this dark shadow of GTA, and that's where Saints Row 2 comes into the picture.
It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
Now you might think after the success of the first game that Volition would start making a sequel to the original game. They did, but way before Saints Row 1 was ever released. A year before Saints Row 1 was even on shelves, the development for the next installment had already begun. From simple planning to throwing ideas at each other to basic development, Saints Row 2 was already starting to be developed. And a few months after Saints Row 1's release, Volition began full work on the next installment into the series. Wanting to capitalise on the newfound success as the Saints Row star still shined bright, that's too many S's to say, success as the Saints Row star still shined bright, Saints Row 2 was then put into full development in the mid of 2006. The message going into development for this game was pretty much improve, expand and adapt, as well as put everything in there. And that's what they did. A bigger Stillwater map, more cars, more customization options for your characters, more weapons, new funny activities, and a more comical tone to complement the game. This was Volition's way of getting the Saints Row series out of GTA's shadow by changing the tone of the game. And that's why in Saints Row 2, the game has a more comical approach. Whilst remaining serious enough, the elements of satire and comical choices available was enough to separate it from the first game and would allow the series to start to peel away from GTA's darkening shadow. In my opinion, I think Saints Row 2 has the perfect balance between being serious and being comical, but Volition would disagree with me and probably call me a dingbat. The game was fun and people enjoyed it, but Volition felt that Saints Row 2's tone was too inconsistent for their liking. From running around naked to surfing on cars to smoking so much devil's lettuce that the devil himself would tell you to slow down and maybe check yourself into rehab, to then getting down to business and taking back what's yours, the tone of the game flip-flopped too much for Volition, and they knew for the next game the tone had to be consistent, clear and concise. The question was whether they would lean in favour of the gangster tone that presented itself in the first game, or would they opt for a more comical tone that appeared in the second game. That was the question they were asking themselves. What tone do they capture for this game? A serious tone or a comical tone? And I think we all know the answer to this question.
It's our time now. Let's get this shit started.
Saints Row 2 had come out and people were eating it all up as Volition swam in the river of money produced by this lucrative game. You might as well call the Volition headquarters the US Treasury Bureau of Engraving and Printing, because as soon as you walk into them headquarters, all you could smell was money. That's all you could smell. Saints Row 2 was a huge commercial success, so Volition wasted no time getting to work on the third installment of the series. However, this would be where the series started to turn, and that's where the change of tone became, well, very noticeable. But where did this change of tone come from? What inspired the changes and why? Well, Linda, if you just relax yourself, right, for a moment, I will answer those burning questions you have. After Saints Row 2's release, only 20% of the team that developed either Saints Row 1 or 2 was present for Saints Row 3's development. The rest have either gone or they've either moved on to a different project. Saints Row 3 had its challenges. Developers struggled to come up with ideas for the game, a story for the game, and most importantly, a tone for the game. Most of the new team didn't have a great understanding of the Saints Row franchise and therefore didn't quite know what to put in the game. Right, Saints Row 3, let's bring some ideas. Any suggestions? Anyone? Let's fire away. I think we should add Peter Griffin as a playable character, to be honest. Peter Griffin. Yeah, Peter Griffin. Whack him in there. And how would that work? How would we possibly transition from gangsters that kill people for fun and have no remorse at all to an animated TV series where you get to play as a big fat dumb butt face and then transition nicely and smoothly out of the animated series into gangsters killing each other again? How are we possibly going to do that? I don't know. I just thought it was well, it's not, and in fact, take your stuff and get out. Go tell your wife that already hates you that you've lost another job because you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot, mate. Get out. Anyone else have any suggestions? Everyone had different ideas and no consistency was being formed. The first 6 months of development, Saints Row 3 was a game about an undercover cop who had to infiltrate the Saints gang. But after some time drifted on, the developers realized, I just bit my tongue by the way, that really hurt. I don't know if you could tell by the way I said developers, but that really hurt. Anyway, the developers realized that this sort of story didn't really suit Saints Row's personality. So the development team came up with torn videos for them to watch that covered themes, sorry, I can't speak now, I've bit my tongue. 1 second.
Speak English! Stand there!
The developers came up with torn videos for them to watch that covered themes that might suit the future tone of their next game. The final torn video included over-the-top action films such as Bad Boys 2, Shoot 'em Up, Hot Fuzz, and Motley Crue's Kickstart My Heart. The developers would watch these films and write down any ideas that came along whilst watching these films that they thought could either make it into Saints Row 3 or would be a good starting building block, should I say. These films played a massive role in helping mould the tone for Saints Row 3, and it gave the developers a theme to work with. Saints Row 3 took the activities that the series became known for, such as insurance fraud, mayhem, trafficking, trailblazing, and decided to double down on them whilst introducing some new over-the-top activities such as Professor Ginky's super ethical reality climax and Tank Mayhem and Guardian Angel. The missions in this game were over the top, had over the top action. And the very first mission is living proof of that. It's you jumping from a rocket that explodes from the sky whilst you avoid all the debris that's coming at you, and you have to dive down and rescue precious, lovely, beautiful Shaundi. This was the type of tone Saints Row 3 would have, the over-the-top action with a comical layer coated on top. This tone was also, more importantly, consistent. From over-the-top missions to claws to customization to weapons to vehicles, Saints Row 3 was truly over the top and was now in a league of its own and no longer could be compared to GTA, as the series was nothing like it anymore. The only thing Saints Row had in common with GTA at this point was the fact that you could drive cars, run around and shoot people. That's it. Saints Row 3 will become Volition's most successful Saints Row game, but right as Saints Row reached the Mount Rushmore of games and was about to grasp the top of it, it would soon slip and fall back down with its next release.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Saints Row 4 was being developed alongside the DLC Enter the Dominatrix for Saints Row 3. However, the developers decided it would make more sense to combine Saints Row 4 and the Saints Row 3 DLC together due to time crunches. Not much of the elements from the DLC made it into 4, but one thing that did is the one thing that many people argue ruined the Saints Row series, and that is superpowers. Superpowers were originally meant for Saints Row 3's DLC, but got put into Saints Row 4's full game. And this is where the over-the-top philosophy became, well, over the top. Saints Row 4 was too much on the ridiculousness scale. There's a great saying, too much of anything is bad for you. And I think Saints Row 4 is a great example of that. With 3, the developers went over the top to allow the game to finally separate itself from GTA's shadow and stand on its own 2 feet, but with 4, they overdid this. The main concept of the story from 3's DLC was kept in for Saints Row 4, which was being in a simulation where you have to take back control of the city to break further and further and further away from the Matrix. But like I said, this was originally a DLC. If this had remained a DLC, I think it would have been a very good DLC. But as a standalone game, well, it just couldn't do that. It just couldn't stand alone. There wasn't enough depth in this game. You couldn't relate to the characters as much. The city didn't have as much detail as it should have, apart from, oh, the Saint shop over there has now been turned into a Zinyak shop. Woohoo! The map lacked depth. So did the story, and so did the characters. It's clear the developers focus more on the gameplay and the action side of things rather than the actual meat of the game. But I think the problem for fans was, once we knew about Saints Row 4's announcement and the release of the game, we knew we wasn't going to get a Saints Row game like 1 and 2. At first we thought, no, it's alright, Saints Row 3, it was just Volition, right? They're going through a phase, they'll come out of it. Don't worry, they'll come out of it. But when 4 was announced, we was all scared and we all realised, oh, no, this isn't a phase anymore. This is the way the series is going, and this is the direction it's going to continue to go in. If you said to someone, this game and this game are made by the same developers more or less, they would probably start laughing at you and calling you a donut. But the sad part is that it's true. You are a donut. No, but seriously, the game to fans didn't feel like a Saints Row game anymore. 3 still felt like one because it kept many of the elements from 2 and was still grounded enough to enjoy, and the over-the-top action was a nice compliment to the game. It felt like the series we grew up with and came to love had been destroyed and massacred, and all we could do was sit back and watch it happen. The problem the developers now faced is if they were going to make another Saints Row game, the only option for them to do was to go back in time. Seeing as the planet got destroyed in Saints Row 4, the only option means going back and making the game grounded, which they didn't want to do, because then guess what starts again? The GTA comparison. So Saints Row 5 never got developed, and it was like, bro, we're done with this series. We killed it. We're sorry. We're done. We're moving on. And that's why they developed Agents of Mayhem, because they couldn't really touch Saints Row anymore. It was at a point, a weird stage where they couldn't touch it. And that's where we go into the future. What the hell? The Saints Row Reboot, aka the worst Saints Row game in the series. I'm sorry Saints Row 4, but you can no longer hold on to that title anymore. There's a new champion, a champion that I see reigning for a very, very long time and remaining undefeated probably to the end of time. The Saints Row Reboot flopped majorly hard. The reviews don't lie.
Oh my god, bro. Oh hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
The problem with the Saints Row Reboot is the family-friendly tone the game decided to take, shown by the lack of edginess, humour and gameplay that the series once offered and became notorious for. The series that once was filled with tongue-in-cheek shop names has now been replaced to more suitable names so no one gets offended and doesn't try cancel Paul Walk Volition on Twitter. Saints Row, the game that once used to poke fun out of certain things, such as freckle bitches being a parody of Hooters, now doesn't want to do that and wants us all to get along and agree with each other because they don't want to get cancelled on Twitter by Sarah with blue hair who has a Black Lives Matter tattoo stretched across her back. The type of woman who hasn't seen a blade of grass since she was born and who has a mum who doesn't speak to her because Sarah, when she was young, tried to sue her for giving birth to her without her verbal consent. Yes, those type of people Volition didn't want to offend. The Saints Row Reboot is a game that the original Saints Row game would have ripped apart and made fun of. You might want to go out there and witch hunt the publishers for this because it's essentially their money they are messing with, and any backlash will fall on the publishers for allowing such a game to come out. But it's not the publishers' fault. Volition made this decision on their own. They even admitted it themselves. Volition wanted to appeal to a larger audience, and having edgy comedy in your game only appeals to a minute audience. Well, guess what, Volition? It was that same audience that helped 1, 2, 3 and 4 sell millions upon millions of copies and allowed your wives to drive in nice Bentleys. So when you decided to go against your original audience, your game flopped. Remember, the customer is always right when it comes to this sort of stuff. We told you exactly what kind of game we wanted and you didn't listen and you paid the price for it.
Make
But it wasn't just the new family-friendly tone that killed off the Saints Row Reboot, it was the laziness behind the game. Terrible, god-awful Wish Shakespeare-type writing pollutes this game and makes this game stink worse than a wet fart under the blanket after eating a dirty kebab. Now, my writing skills aren't amazing, but my script for this video is better than Volition's script for their game, and I suck at writing, right? The writing is so uneventful and it doesn't do anything to make it captivating, funny, relatable, clever or anything. It literally has no substance. An empty water bottle has more substance than this writing does in the game. There's no foundation for this game to stand on. The game was also incredibly buggy upon launch, which is the developers once again being lazy. The gameplay got repetitive and redundant about 4 missions in, and it just consists of you constantly shooting from the top of a car. The story is lackluster. The characters are shambolic, with no depth to them and not a single whiff of a personality. They all sound like AI robots. The characters have no emotions behind them, no soul, no drive, no passion, no colour, nothing, absolutely nothing. So when you create a game like that, you can only expect it to do one thing, and that is flop. You might as well call this game the Dyson V15, because all it does is suck. The Saints Row Reboot is so from its original tone that it's actually impressive. It's even more impressive that they managed to make Saints Row 4's tone look closer to the original tone than this game does. That is mind-blowing. That how do you get Saints Row 4, which is so far from 1 and 2's tone, to be more relatable and more closer to that tone than the new game that you've released? That is mind-blowing. That is so impressive. I'm honestly stunned by that. The woke tone of the game killed this game. A series that once struggled to find its perfect tone until Saints Row 3 is now a series where the tone is dull, bland and an uninviting mess. A series that once struggled to escape the clutches of the GTA comparisons, and the only way they could escape was by pushing the envelope and increasing the wackiness in the game. Even though the comparisons to GTA at the time was a compliment, now if you compare GTA and Saints Row together, you are majorly disrespecting GTA, and if I was Rockstar, I wouldn't take that kind of disrespect, to be honest. The GTA comparisons played a part in Saints Row's downfall, as the game struggled to find its own feet and struggled to find its place in the world, with each game's tone being completely different or a more over-the-top version of the previous one. Saints Row really never found its true tone. If they kept the tone from the first game, they would forever be in GTA's shadow. If they kept the tone from the second game, they would suffer from an inconsistent tone, which was serious one minute and then all fun and games the next. Saints Row 3 felt like the right tone for Volition, but knew if they kept that tone, then they would constantly have to one-up themselves, and that's where 4's tone overdid this, ruining the game completely. I think Saints Row's tone lies between a blend of 2 and 3. It's that weird paradox where you constantly feel like you have to one-up yourself and constantly feel like you have to be better than your previous work. If you produce a YouTube video, your next video has to be better, then the next one has to be better than that, and the next one has to be better than that. I think it's a good example if you look at Mr. Beast, right? His video started off kind of tame, like, oh, watching this video for 10 hours, and now it's like swimming with thousands of alligators hoping I don't die. You know what I mean? The tone keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up, and it keeps getting more and more and more extreme. It's a paradox of where you constantly have to outdo yourself and constantly have to produce your best work, and the last work you produce has to be better than the previous work, and the previous work has to be better than that, and it just spirals like that, and the next work you produce has to be better than that one. It's a weird paradox, and I think Volition suffered from this, and I think that's why Saints Row was ultimately doomed from the start, because they knew they had to improve the first game from the second game. The second game had to be better than the first game, the third one had to be better than the second, the fourth one had to be better than the third, and if they struggled or failed at any of that point, the game's legacy and reputation would decline, and that's what happened. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think Saints Row's perfect tone is? In my opinion, it's 2, but I do understand if you say 3 or a blend between 2 and 3. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what's going on in that sexy brain of yours. I would love to hear your thoughts. Have a discussion with people in the comments. Make some friends. Flirt with some girls in the comments. Get a girlfriend. I don't know. Just do what you want to do. I don't care. Just let me hear your thoughts.